Hey everyone, today I want to talk about having a good foundation. Before I get to that, I just want to introduce myself if you haven't watched any of our fall movement series. I'm Phillip Mitchell. I'm one of the holistic physical therapists here at Mitchell Holistic Health. And we're doing a fall movement series where we're trying to just teach people how to move optimally. And I'm just going off 13 years of experience of like, what are some of the common movements that I see really makes a big change for people. And so we're going through like 8 different principles. And today we're talking about keeping your inside ankle bone elevated. And so the reason we talked about having a good foundation is no one would ever build a house on a faulty foundation, just like we would never want to stand or move on top of a faulty foundation. And so what we found is a lot of times looking at people's foot structure and just making sure that they don't have a collapsed arch and they have a stable dome arch uh, and nice stable, interaction with the ground, then everything else moves better uh, above the foot. So, if you have nagging ankle, knee, hip, honestly, any nagging problem throughout the body, one of the things you want to look at is you want to look at how's their ankle moving? Because we know if your ankle's stuck, if it falls down and in like this, then your shin, which sits on top of it, it needs to be able to move around like a joystick. And if it can't joystick around like that, then you have a huge problem. And so, what we want to teach people is how to have good ankle mobility and how to make sure that they're moving properly. And so, I want to give you 3 things to work on at home. 2 are going to be different postures, and 1 is going to be an exercise to work on keeping your inside ankle bone elevated. So the first one, I'm going to be moving around a little bit. The first one's going to be a sitting posture. Okay. All right. I know I'm at a different angle, so it looks a little funny. So this is called Seiza sitting posture. So what we want to do here is I'm sitting back on my heels. So I'm going to turn to the side so you can see me a little bit better. Okay. So I have my 2 fists between my knees. I'm going heels away and I'm trying to sit back on my heels like this. Okay. I'm not doing this, but I'm doing this. So I'm keeping my muscles engaged and I'm sitting back. So what I'm doing is I'm stretching out my ankles that are getting that are tight. So if this is an exercise when you sit, if this does nothing after a few minutes, then this is not a good exercise for you because it tells me that you probably have good ankle mobility. But for me and for a lot of people in here, our ankles have just gotten gunked up and just been stiff from how we've been moving for years and years. So this is a great exercise just to help stretch the ankle bones, just the ankle joint out. Okay. The second exercise I want to work on is just standing posture. So I want to teach people what good standing posture is. I know a lot of times in physical therapy we talk about like what good sitting posture is, but we don't seem to emphasize a lot of like what good standing posture is. So I'm going to show you from the front and the side. So when I'm standing, if I'm looking ahead, I want to have 1 fist in between my feet. I want to have my toes pointed straight. I want to have very light pressure on my heels. Okay, you don't want to have all the pressure on your heels. That just drives stress straight through the body and leads to a lot more wear and tear. The other thing I want to show you from the side is when you're standing, you don't want to have your hips way forward like this. This puts a ton of strain on your back and is not good for you. So we want to have same thing with our feet, but we want to get our butt slightly back. So if you draw a line from the outside part of the ankle to the shoulder and the ear, your hip would fall right in line or slightly behind it. Okay. Just think about the position that we get in when we're playing a sport. Now, we're getting back like this. If we're trying to guard someone, this is an athletic position. It's because it allows us to move any direction that we want. We want to be more like this than this. So this is going to take all the stress off the body. This is going to put the stress on the body. If you do that for hours and hours at a time, you run into issues. So standing posture is very, very important. The last thing about standing posture is because we're talking about inside ankle bone, you want to make sure that you're standing. You want to feel like you're pulling your base of the inside part of your foot up like this. So you're creating that arch. So I'm standing here, I want to feel like I'm pulling up. That's going to put my weight more on the front and outside part of my foot rather than all on my big toe or heel there. Okay, my heels are slightly off the ground and my butt slightly back. Okay, it feels weird. It's going to feel weird for a few weeks as you're doing this. But if you have a job where you're standing in one place for a long time, the way you're standing can make a huge difference on how you feel. Uh, and not only just like less pain, but less fatigue. Your body doesn't have to work as hard because your muscles are absorbing most of that stress rather than it's taking a lot of pounding on the joints. Okay, so the last one is called, we're going to do a bow hold. The reason I want to focus on this is I want to make sure that we're focusing on keeping the inside ankle bone elevated. So I'm going to move the camera down so you can see my knees a little bit more. Okay, so here I'm going feet straight, my knees are out. I'm going to go tail up in the air, squeeze out my shoulder blades, and I'm just going to hold this. Okay, my chest is almost parallel with the ground, but you can see my heels are off the ground, and I'm keeping my inside ankle bone elevated. From the side, it looks a bit more like this. Okay, and just try to hold this as long as you can. This is great to build up your legs, build up the strength, but it's also working on improving the strength in your feet and then in your ankles like that. Okay. Okay, so we covered those 3 exercises. 2 are postures and 1 is more of a movement that we're trying to work on. I'm gonna redo that. All right, so we just got through the 3 exercises. 2 are postures and 1 is just an exercise I want you to work on. This honestly shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes, but it can have profound impacts on just how you feel throughout the day, especially if you have a job where you're standing and you're up on your feet for a long time. I can tell you numerous patient stories of how much better their body has felt after just trying to work on their standing for a week or 2. But this is something you just have to pay attention to during the week. You're not just going to automatically do it without thinking about it. So you have to think like, oh, are my feet straight? Is my tail back? Are my inside ankle bones elevated? You just have to be aware. And then once you start thinking about it, your body's just going to start going into those postures. So next week, we're going to talk about how to engage the big muscles in your body so you can take a lot of stress off your joints, because we see a lot of times just the way we're moving, we're not engaging those big muscles that just make it a lot easier. And it takes a lot of the stress out of the system when we're moving with the right muscle groups. So yeah, tune in for that. And then, for our very last video, we're going to talk a little bit about nutrition and just how that can make a huge impact just on being able to move with less pain. So join me next week, and we're going to go through teaching you how to use those big muscles in your body. It's called back chain dominance.